Welcome to Aging Rules. My name is Barbara Thompson, and we're going to do our F-bomb segment, talking about the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, F-tags for long-term care facilities. So we're going to look at F-bomb, the F-bomb that goes with 483.60 Food and Nutrition Services. So let's jump right in. In my past vlogs, we talked about the various F-tags that CMS has for each department in long-term care. You can see my little rainbow of flags. We're going to talk about 483.60, which is Food and Nutrition Services. We start out with F-800 and we go through to F-814. Those are the 14 tags that we are surveyed and that we get reviewed annually once a year for federal surveys. While we're talking about F-800, I want you to keep in mind the scope and severity grid that we talked about previously. Is this something in F-800 that could be an isolated incident, a pattern, the same thing repeating itself, and is it widespread? Is it happening with all the residents in our long-term care facility? So keep in mind, lower level, the ABCs, those are the lower level tags. D and E get a little bit more intense, but then it definitely heats up in the red zone. And we do not want to have dietary tags in the upper red zone. So let's take a look at F-800. So when we talk about the way the surveys are performed in our buildings, CMS has a guide to surveyors. It is referred to as Appendix PP, and they go in and they explain every F tag with a definition of what the tag relates to, what the intent of the tag is in regards to running that department in the facility, and the guidance for the surveyor, how they're supposed to come in and survey or audit you or observe and find if you're deficient in this tag or not, if you're following the rules as they've set forth. So F-800, Food and Nutrition Services, definition is the facility must provide each resident with a nourishing, palatable, well-balanced diet that meets his or her daily nutritional and special dietary needs, taking into consideration the preferences of each resident. So in there, it's built in resident choice, personalized cares. So like I said, there's an intent. What is the intent of this regulation, and how are we going to follow it? And what is the guidance for the surveyor and what they need to hone in on to see if we're compliant. So F-800, let's dissect the definition of it. The facility must provide each resident with a nourishing, palatable, and well-balanced diet. Notice the highlighted. The facility must provide. So it doesn't say may. It says must. So we have to be able to document and provide nourishing, palatable, and a well-balanced meal. Nourishing, that follows the RDAs, the recommended daily allowances. That's our nutrients, our vitamins, protein, all of those are built into the RDAs, and that is proving that it's nourishing. Palatable. This is a word that has many meanings. But when we look at it in this respect, it can talk about temperature. Is the hot food hot and the cold food cold? Is it to the resident's liking? Is that cup of coffee warm enough or lukewarm enough? Flavorings. Is the food flavorful? Now, we are allowed to use spices. We're allowed to use salt. So please don't, stop putting salt in your water when you cook your oatmeal. We still can use flavorings. But we need to also be aware that if they want to put more flavorings, we should have salt and pepper available, or maybe we can put out barbecue sauce or hot sauce or those kind of things. But that is telling us that initially what we give them is palatable, and then they can spice it up if they want more. Same way with textures. Is the texture good? Maybe, for a resident, for a while it was popular to serve the smashed potatoes where we kept the skins on. Well, some of the residents might felt that texture they didn't like. They wanted mashed potatoes that were mashed. But there again, that's their opinion, and that's palatability. What I'm seeing for F-800 being cited for palatability, a lot of that has to do with the temperatures of the food. The milk's too warm, or the food is lukewarm, it's not hot, or the potato salad is warm, it's not cold. So a lot of the palatability is the temperature. But that is something when you have resident council or when you go around and do food audits, talk to your residents, talk to them about the word palatability. Let them know that that's a term that defines the quality and their liking and their approval of your food. Well-balanced diet, we have a well-balanced diet because we're required to have our menus signed off by registered dietitians. So we have to have them approved by RDs. Now, I also like to see certified dietary managers co-sign with the RD. So there's two sets of signatures, the RD that's approved it and the CDM that's also spent time understanding and okaying and serving the menus as written. So that's where well-balanced comes in. Meeting his or her daily nutritional and special dietary needs. And here's where we need to pay attention. If we have special needs in our diet orders, we need to follow those. It can be a texture, if they need thickened liquids, if it's a pureed or mechanical soft. It can also be some sort of adaptive equipment. Maybe it's a built-up spoon or a scoop plate so that they're able to feed themselves without assistance. Or if it's an allergy, we need to know, are they, for example, is it a celiac? Is it a gluten allergy? Is it a milk, dairy, egg allergy? Those are special dietary needs, and we need to make sure that we're following those and honoring those diet orders that are written for that. Taking into consideration the preferences, cultural, religious, likes, dislikes. Once again, that's the preferences of the resident. So you should be asking them upon admission if there's any cultural or religious preferences they have, if they need a kosher meal, if they need halal, if they don't eat pork, for example. Also talk about their likes and dislikes, and make sure when you're doing that you make the distinction between an allergy and a dislike. So an allergy physically makes them ill. A dislike is one they just don't like. So for example, liver is one of those hot items that's usually a dislike. Doesn't make them sick, they just don't like it. But then again, if they have a peanut allergy and they eat peanut butter, that is an allergy. They're going to have a reaction to that, a physical reaction that makes them ill. So make sure when you do a like and dislike that you take a little time educating them on so that you know if it's a true allergy or not. So moving forward, we talked about what is the intent. So the intent is that we want to be sure that we as dietary personnel and our staff are able to serve the residents the meals according to their preferences and according to the standards set forward with being palatable, well balanced. So we need to educate and have competencies and have documentation that our staff are trained and that they understand following the diet orders, and also honoring the residents' preferences and being able to, for example, get them ketchup when requested, or if they want barbecue sauce or hot sauce, that, you know, we're ensuring that we're covering their dietary needs, but we're also covering the individual preferences and the right for them to say no. If they don't like what's being served, what's the alternative? Are they being offered an alternative? So that is the intent, the why. Now, if we're going to be cited for this, the guidance tells us what the surveyors are going to look for. They want to know, did we communicate amongst our dietary staff and other staff? It could be ancillary staff. It could be volunteers that are helping serve in your dining room. It could be nursing staff. You know, do they understand the diets? Do they understand the resident choices and what their options are? And are we getting this in their residence assessment, in their care plan? What are their actual special needs, special requests? Is it in writing? That way we can show we're following it. So once again, take a look at your care plans. And when you have new admissions, that you do those likes and those dislikes. Another thing, offer meaningful choices at meals. So if they don't like the meal that's being served today, is there something, maybe an always available list, or is there an alternate? Do you serve 2 different main choices every day? But you need to make sure that they're being offered that and it's reasonable. So say, for example, George doesn't want any green beans, but he'd rather you give him 2 slices of pie. Well, you know, the dessert and a vegetable is not a swap there, so you might have to do a little education and say, well, maybe we should try some broccoli, but I'll cut you maybe just a little bit bigger piece of pie, if that's okay with his diet. But like I said, we need to offer, you know, meaningful choices when we're substituting. Reasonable efforts, this is also very big. This is something that you need to look at if you're having struggles with, maybe you're out in the middle of a rural care community where you don't have a specialty store or a nutrition store nearby, so you can't get all the gluten-free products, or you're having trouble finding halal foods. You need to make a reasonable effort, and you need to document that you have. In cases where it's a cultural preference, be sure that you're visiting with the resident and their family ongoing, especially on admission, since they're new to your community. Talk to them about any limitations you might have in being able to 100% cover that special need. Because here, you know, as long as you're documenting the ongoing conversation, the resident and their family understand the challenges, you're making a reasonable effort. Overall, systemic issues, if you truly aren't educating and you truly aren't following up with competencies with your staff, then your system is broke down. And you're going to have one of the tags that is going to be in the widespread, because you have a pattern. You have a systematic breakdown in your procedures and protocols on serving the nutritionally sound, palatable diet. So make sure you've got policies and procedures, and you've got signed off competencies for your staff, that they've been trained in the way your menus and the way your foods are served, and that they meet that palatability standard. A little bit about me. I have a website, agingrulesblog.com. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, it'll automatically shoot you here. But check back frequently. I'm going to start to post more resources on my website. I also have a couple items for purchase. I'm educated in the MDS process and love to share that. And this is the MDS 3.0 cause and eye care plan manual. Cause are your critical area assessments that you do for your MDS documentation. And this is just for dietary. This is a very good step-by-step, gives you some really good examples how to write good care plans that are personal, and eye care plans. I also am a firm believer in food first, and not so much, you know, I'm all about fortification versus supplementation. So here's just a very short, small portions, radical recipes with fortified foods. This was done for one of our ARP communities nearby. They wanted us to have something for at-home caregivers on fortified foods in small quantities. So I put that on my website for purchase as well. So that's it for F-800. Stay tuned. We'll get through the other 13 tags as time goes along. I just want to say thank you everyone for continuing to serve up wonderful meals, taking care of your residents and your staff. You are true food lovers and special people. So keep up the good work. Healthcare heroes are truly heroes.